In addition to being an environmental attorney with over 25 years of administrative experience in defending public lands and being an advocate of park policy, Caryl Hart is one of Greg Sarris' best friends. Today on Place and Purpose, we are going to reminisce on all that Caryl has accomplished over the past decades, working with California State Parks Commission, the Parks Forward Commission, and as director of the Sonoma County Regional Parks, where she and Greg collaborated on many important projects that benefit to this day the community and habitat quality region-wide. Over the past 5 years, Caryl has served as the vice chair of the California Coastal Commission, a position she still holds. And in discussion with Greg and Obi, she will introduce us to what the California Coastal Commission is and what it is charged with protecting. And we will learn about all that has been done on her watch, and perhaps most importantly, all that remains yet to do.
Okay, we're live. Okay, this is going to be a good episode. Hi, welcome to Place and Purpose, Year 2, Episode 4. Caryl Hart has joined us. So good to see you, Caryl. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Caryl.
Good morning.
Yes, and I want to remind our listeners that the Federated Indians of Greaton Rancheria have sponsored this ongoing podcast. We're very proud to be presenting it since it touches on so many themes that are central to who we are as an indigenous people.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm so excited, and it's nice and brisk and just fabulous. As your other guests have mentioned, couldn't be in a more beautiful place, Sonoma County, up here on the mountain. It's just awesome, fantastic. So it's just an honor to be here, and I can't wait to talk about lots of stuff that people might find interesting.
Gosh, we have so much to talk about. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Great.
And I'm excited for this context. And I really have to say, Greg, that was a wonderful little introduction. Thank you for grounding that and exactly who our sponsor is. And really, there is a purpose behind this place and this time, this right now. Here it is, the beginning. Well, it's the end of October. This is technically was supposed to be our November episode, but we're here a little bit early, and what a beautiful autumn it is turning out to be.
It's a little early. The rains, we've had some rains luckily early, and if you look around, you'll see that there's already green grass shoots going, and I'm praying and assuming all at once that is going to mean we've passed the fire danger up here.
Yeah, for the time being, it feels like that. It feels like that. But it's interesting because I'm working on my next book, this fire book, and looking at the paleoclimate, the history of fire across the California floristic province over the past 1,000 years. The largest fires that have happened, even in a pre-contact California, always happened after extreme rain years because you get all that fuel and then it goes.
That's always a thing.
So, we're looking at the fire seasons of 24 and 25 and thinking, yeesh, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's a big thing with parks. Like with park management, it's great that everything is green, but park managers, often are responsible for keeping things trimmed up and stuff. And
for sure.
Then there's all sorts of controversy about what you're trimming and where you're trimming. And so the idea of a lot of rain and a lot of growth is such a positive, but then at least from a park management perspective, it's always got that flip side. But this has just been such a great year because everything was so dry and there was so much that needed to come back. And just sitting in this meadow, you can see how perfect it's going to be. It's going to be such an amazing winter. So, well, hopefully we have a little El Nino problem happening, but
we'll see how that it's very difficult to predict, though, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
You know what made me think? The last 1,000 years you're looking at, and then of course following the huge fires. But I immediately think that perhaps in those situations, at least in this area, the amount of undergrowth got ahead of the indigenous controlled burning when they had so much of it. So, they were probably put in a position to catch up because, of course, 1,000 years ago for us isn't that long ago.
Really isn't. What a nice time frame that is. Speaking of years, Caryl, I am so excited to explore a little bit of your career. In advocacy, in environmental advocacy, in from parks to the coast to emerging prospects. Okay, so wait a minute. How long have you two known each other?
A really long time. I mean,
a pretty long
time because I met Greg when I decided to go back to grad school because I was a lawyer before, and then
20 years.
It was 2000. Yeah, it was like 2000. 4, probably.
Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah, and I was first starting to sort of get a handle on, it's amazing, and I don't think it's that untypical, that I really knew very little about Native American history. I mean, for an educated person, I was on my own, trajectory of what I learned, and unlike you two, who seem to know everything about everything, I have to say it's just absolutely incredible. But I really didn't know that much. And then when we first met, I remember, and I'll never forget it, and you neither, was that I had just been studying. I just went back to Cal. I was starting to learn a lot more about Native American history in California. And I remember you all were in like a strip mall office there.
Yeah.
Was that before you? No, you had been recognized, but no land had been. You hadn't.
Yeah, we hadn't acquired land yet. We were in the process of looking for land. I think maybe we'd already been on Highway 37 and had given it up.
Yeah.
I think at that point. And there was all that controversy at that point about how terrible we were, because of the casino and all of that. And
Cows, not casinos. Remember that whole thing?
And you were so, well, I'll let you tell the story,
Yeah.
because it was so heartwarming for us, for you to come in uninvited and just say what you
Did
said.
I just show up?
Yes, I think so.
It set the tone for our entire relationship.
yes, exactly.
But anyway, so I don't recall how I got there.
Give me some details.
Well, they
here.
were having a tribal
We were
council
having
meeting.
a tribal council meeting. All I remember is
No, I wanted to know. No, somebody had reached out to me that was involved in the Highway 37 to see if I could. I don't even remember, to tell you the truth. But anyway, so I came to the meeting, and I was sitting there talking to the tribal council, and then I don't know exactly how this happened, but I had a complete emotional breakdown. I remember just like starting to sob and cry because I was talking about everything that had happened to you, and now even, your this first attempt over in Nevada to start to reclaim the land that, of course, was yours, and I just really fell apart, and it sort of set the tone of how it was going to be with myself and the tribe. I mean, it was like this emotional connection at that moment. But then I went on, I was involved a little bit. Mainly I was writing about it and studying it.
You had also just read a lot while you were
At
in
that
graduate
time,
school
right.
about the history of California Indians in this area in particular, and reading about that history, it's pretty astonishing.
It's soul shattering.
And then to be with the tribe.
You were just realizing that in this I
hadn't incorporated it emotionally, and then just being with the tribe and starting to talk about what they were struggling with, trying to get the land for whatever enterprise, because they had only been recognized a few years before because of all of the work that Greg had done, which was absolutely incredible, for such a important tribe in the history of California to not be a recognized tribe or to have dealt with everything they dealt with. So in any event, that sort of set the tone for our relationship, and I went on to study and incorporate a lot of Native American history. I think I wrote some papers about the pushback on recognition, on Native American tribal recognition, because of the fear of, casino expansion, et cetera, and just that dichotomy, which...
Caryl, that puts you at odds with a lot of your environmentalist community.
My environmental buddies.
Yeah, because again, as I've always said, folks love us when we're fallen nature gods, but as soon as it's a question of power or territory, we're wagon burners again. And it was ironic in many ways, that the environmentalists were so against us. They kept saying, do anything but a casino. And I, like, what? Do you want to do a 1/4-cent tax so that maybe we could go to college and have houses or, medical care?
Right.
What? Oh, no, we don't want to do that. Well, what do you want us to do? We had close to an 80% dropout rate. Life expectancy for a California Indian male was 47 years. I mean, this is going on, and what do you want to do? So, and again, I realize, and I'm sure Caryl realized at the time that the building a large building and stuff was in some ways antithetical to what we were about, but we did want to be something that would benefit Indian and non-Indian alike, with a mission of social justice and environmental stewardship. I know that sounded very antithetical. It sounded like here's this guy, Greg, talking about this, and they were saying I wasn't even Indian and all this stuff. And So, but I'm glad that we're sitting here today, that we have not only walked the talk, but more.
From my perspective, that seems to be really shifting. Even over the past 5 years, the indigenous voice in Sacramento
Absolutely
has absolutely become a real force. In fact, the 30 by 30 with the indigenous marine stewardship areas is like a real key aspect to that whole plan too.
And Obi, I mean, seriously, it's hard to think that that what Greaton did in terms of their hiring, in terms of what they said, which is, we are focused. Yes, we are building a casino at this location. However, we are going to do it all, LEED certified. We are going to do all union. We are going to pay, you've heard, I'm sure, what the tribe has done.
Recycled water for everything except drinking.
Yeah, and so they became a leader, and then their contributions to the community are just, you really can't even express the impact that they've had.
The list goes on.
The list goes on, but
about,
I mean, that is
that building and about the business practices around
yeah,
it.
Well,
and it's
Caryl,
a sign to Sacramento
the way
of what's
we-
possible.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
The way you and I worked together, I mean, there was the propositions, I forget what they were here, for the parks.
J&M.
J&M, and the first one failed. And
Okay, so this is a good point of discussion here. I want to talk about how you guys collaborated on this, right?
right, and so
Well, it started with the compact, actually. That was the first.
And what year was that? Can we pull up some dates in our mind here so we can get a
12.
scope of the time frame?
2010,
Okay.
2011. And we were going for our compact, and there was huge controversy. Many of the environmental communities that we now, of course, support were very much against us getting a compact signed with the state. What they didn't realize, of course, is that the state is, beholden to the feds. So even if the state, all the pressure on the state to not ratify our compact so that we could game, the feds would have come in and said, okay.
You needed the compact to build the casino?
To game.
To game. Oh, to game. Got it. Okay.
Because you deal, and so one of the things, what we did in the compact, and in fact we just amended it again, we had huge mitigation measures in there, and so we and a lot of the tribes didn't like it because we were giving so much to the city of Rohnert Park and to the county of Sonoma. Unprecedented amounts of money.
You were giving too much money.
We were giving too much money, and the other tribes didn't like it because they were afraid it would set a precedent.
Oh, I see.
And for them to give, I mean, I got calls from other chairmen that said, you don't understand, we don't owe the white man anything, which is true. But again, you take the high road. You take the high road. We're all here together. And being consistent with doing something that would benefit Indian and non-Indian alike, we all share this community. So that was what we did. And Caryl at the time was head of the parks. And so, obviously, with our relationship that had already established,
Sonoma County.
And it wasn't a quid pro quo. It had nothing. She didn't pay her salary. She already had a salary.
Okay, that was a good one.
I just wanted to be clear.
That's good. Let's do a live podcast and talk about how we were paying you under the table, like some secret job. That's perfect.
Yes, but I will say this: Caryl did more in securing land and so forth for Sonoma County than the people in her position for the 50 years before her, in my opinion.
Now, how long had you been with the parks?
I just had gotten there. It was
Okay.
so funny. So I started in November 2010. So this was going on in 2011, and really it did come out of the blue because I remember so well Greg calling me and saying, look, we're working on the compact and this is what we're going to do. And it was basically give, once they got to a certain point financially, to give, really significant amount of money, way more than our budget was at the time. We get a certain amount, parks get a certain amount of our budget from the general fund.
Yeah.
At the time, we had no other sources of funding.
I see.
Because it was before the ballot measure, before everything. So we were really struggling. I mean, it was really challenging situation to support the park system, particularly expand it. At the time I took over at Parks, we had less publicly accessible parks in this county than in any other Bay Area county. So it was really, and it's
Yeah,
Sonoma
can you
County,
believe
one of
that?
the most beautiful, amazing areas. But State Parks was struggling. State Parks was going through its own financial crisis, and regional parks, same deal. So anyway,
I remember the crisis.
compact-
So they were talking about closing down so many
it
parks.
was
In
a
fact,
huge
some of
deal.
them were.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was really bad. But anyway, so Greg proposed that the compact include significant funding for Sonoma County Regional Parks and Sonoma County Ag Preservation Open Space District, which is our partner, our acquisition partner, to support the acquisition of parkland and protection of agriculture, particularly organic, the type of agriculture that the tribe, and that became part of the compact. And that was our first sort of. And then we moved on to the Tole discussion.
Yeah, you took it right out of my mouth. I was going to say, Caryl then was instrumental in creating with us the model of co-management. And so we with 4,000 acres, I believe, approximately of Tole, and sacred land for us, the lake there, extremely sacred for us. Caryl was able to.
Can you describe that geography a little bit? I love that. Since we're talking about place and purpose, it's on
Have
the
you
other.
been there, Obi?
Yeah, I have. It's
Yeah.
on the other side of the mountain that we're on.
If you go, well, in fact, if you follow the mountain directly south,
Right.
You will run right into Tole Lake. There's a chain of small lakes, that being the largest. But that lake, it was a relatively shallow lake, but it was a place where, again, Indian medicine people came from as far away as Mexico and the Canadian border to congregate to talk about medicine and to share stories. The appropriate analogy would be sort of a Stanford University hospital. So people would come, and of course, when the Europeans dynamited the south end of the lake and drained it for agriculture, all of a sudden what was there were thousands upon thousands of charm stones, more than has ever been found anywhere. And many of the stones were rocks and quartz and things from Mexico and from Canada and other places in the United States, where obviously people were coming and trading and doing all of that sort of thing. And what we always believed is many of these stones and these charm stones and so forth were used in healing ceremonies, and they would take the disease from the body, and the stone would take it, and then you would throw the stone in the water to drown the disease.
The extraction.
Yeah, the extraction of the disease, and the water would absorb it. The water would absorb it. So anyway,
Are the stones still there? Were they excavated?
this is an.
Are they in a basement at Berkeley now?
Some of them are, but
Yeah.
the
It's
ranch
Smithsonian.
owner who had those stones, when she sold the park, or sold the land to the park, or donated the land to the park.
No, it
sold
was-
it.
yeah.
Yeah, sold. Yeah, because we helped pay for it.
Yeah, it was a significant
That's right.
expenditure.
How could I forget? But then what she had, and I remember going over there in her barn and seeing boxfuls and boxfuls of these stones, but she wanted us to pay for them.
It's not in my tradition. It's completely irrational, but you could not pay me to touch one of those things.
Well, that's what we
Right,
felt.
dude.
So
You're right.
yeah. So we said no. We said no. You can have them. So
I'll spit out my coffee.
so we said no. You could keep them. So anyway, but the upshot of all of this was that with the county parks and headed by Caryl, we created a co-management agreement, and I mean co-management, 50-50. We sit at a table, nobody has complete power, and the tribe has say over the trails, the way the land will be used, what parts of the land, because there's a lot of sacred material there, will not be talked about. Right now, Caryl, by the way, I just read, coming up tomorrow for a tribal council meeting, we have a whole bunch of the naming using the Coast Miwok names
Oh, that's
for the trail
fantastic.
all
Oh,
the
that
way
is
through.
so cool. That's fantastic.
So,
So
I just
anyway.
thought about it. So anyway, it was a 50-50 and wonderful. And what's important about that is it has become a model.
That was one of the first.
That was the first.
That was the first. Between
a
sovereign.
municipal, other than national parks. Like national parks had poked their, they had poked,
Okay.
they put their toe in the water of that.
But they really didn't have
sovereign
This kind of an
until
arrangement.
Point Reyes.
Right.
And this model became the blueprint for what we did with Point Reyes at a national level.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So really important.
county level agency, sovereign indigenous nation,
Right.
recognized at that point as
Yes.
federated.
Yes.
Okay, so coming together for a co-management of a park, that blows my mind. When, especially as we're, my new book, Deserts of California, it's mostly about wilderness, which is such a problematic term. It's such a 20th century word. But when you're talking about co-management between agencies, sovereign indigenous nations, and you're talking in a park context, right? Protection, conservation,
And interpretation.
interpretation and access. Yes.
Because when you go to Tole, there's so many beautiful areas in Sonoma County, and there's so many beautiful state, regional parks and other public lands.
Right.
All over, from the ocean to this beautiful Sonoma Mountain. And Tole is a beautiful area. It is. But what is it that makes it such a special place that would make, from a regional parks perspective, from parks perspective, you're always thinking, what defines this park? What is this park really about? And when you stand there in the lake bed, which was the largest inland lake in the area until it was drained, you can feel it. If you can't feel it, if you can't feel the history, something's seriously wrong with you. And it's so overwhelming. And so to me, in any event, and knowing just the history that I did know, there was just no other approach. That is what that park is. That is what the heart of it is.
Yeah.
And without that, it's just another hike in it's. So this is what makes a park come alive.
Interpretation.
Yeah, yeah. That's a word that park people use to describe, explaining the details about the history or what the natural resources.
So if you were a non-Indian, let's say, and you went down, as Caryl was saying, into the lake bed, and you just feel this awe when you're there, this will help you understand why and how you're feeling it.
Right.
Yeah.
And
right.
it will just make it much
Yeah.
richer experience.
Did you work together on any other parks in the area, in the region?
Well, we
Or was
worked
that-
on the measure.
that was- oh, the measure.
So there was a second. So
Okay.
then we're continuing the story. We lost the first one, and then
By
measure.
1,000 votes, because we had to do it a little strange. It was without the cities. So it wasn't a lack of support. It was that I couldn't get it together to get all the cities on board in time,
Yeah.
put it on the ballot. So it was an unincorporated area only. So it was a little bit of a weird, complicated thing. But it almost made it. So it was obvious.
And we're not
it would.
election deniers, so we accepted the
Yes, we.
defeat.
Gee whiz.
So
Gee whiz.
what we did is what everybody should do. We went for it again a second time around.
With the tribe financing, making the donations for these campaigns, which makes it so great because you don't have to spend all your time.
Was this like months, years?
No, one was in 16 and one was in
Okay.
16 and one was in 18. So we just went
2
right
years.
back.
Yeah, we went right back the next election cycle.
And it killed. It went. It's
Yeah.
like 75% or something. Maybe not that much, but a lot.
So
Very
when
high.
you left as the director of the Sonoma Parks.
Well, that was after Trump got
Okay.
So that election happened. I knew that we were going to win the next time because it was so close. We just needed to incorporate the city parks and make sure that they benefited from the measure too. And the cities were at that point indicating, everybody could see this was the direction was
That
going.
measure was 2016, 2017?
That was in 16.
Okay.
So then, the federal government changed in 2016, kind of a dramatic way.
Yeah.
And I just felt that I had done pretty much what I needed to do at regional parks. We had such a great crew over there, and Burt Whitaker, who's the director now, and Melanie Parker, the deputy director, were all teed up, ready to go, and it was great staff. Everything was, headed in the right direction. So I just felt like, look, I need to move on and start to work at the state and federal levels because of this whole situation.
It galvanized you somehow.
Who didn't it? Every single person.
Either that or flop over and die.
Yeah, our national monuments were being
interesting
converted.
idea.
Parks were under attack.
Yeah. Indian sovereignty was under attack.
Everything that we care about.
Activated for things that perhaps wouldn't have been activated, right? It's almost like counterintuitive somehow.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that Trump effect. I felt in my life, because that was when my first book, The California Field Atlas, came out, and I wondered, like, if he hadn't been elected, if my book would have done as well.
I don't know,
right?
Obi. I think
because I think like
No, because that audience is the audience that got up to fight. So you're
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting nonetheless. So that was really when you jumped off from this local
from Parks. So 2017, I left Parks, and also now Governor Newsom was running. I wanted to be involved in helping form his policy, and I I got to know Wade, your former Crowfoot, who's another resources.
Yeah.
Obviously, you just interviewed him a couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago, and it's just a great team trying to put together for his campaign, what his policy should look like, and I was involved quite a bit in, where state parks should go, because by that time I'd been on the State Parks Commission for like 15 years or something.
I see.
I was appointed to the State Parks Commission in 2000. I got my doctorate. All that stuff had happened, so I was ready to, have something. I had something to say or to talk about, to write about. And it was, like I said, with Wade and a bunch of other people, it was great. So then after that, and then, after...
when does the California Coastal Commission come on your horizon?
After the election, then the Speaker of the Assembly, his staff reached out to me and said that he was interested in discussing with me an appointment to the commission.
Right.
And so I started that process, and then I was appointed to the commission in 2019.
What had been your experience with the commission before that? What did you know about it? And I was thinking that you might segue into introducing us to what actually the commission is for people who don't know.
And I mean, I think that for your listeners, you're going to have some that are very familiar with the commission and others that have heard of it but don't exactly understand how critically important it is. And, I was thinking about today that we would be talking about the commission, and I think all you have to do to understand the import of the Coastal Commission is close your eyes and imagine the coast of California, the magnificent coast of California, as if it had no land use protections, no oversight entity to make sure that the natural resources are protected, that access, that views, that agriculture, all the things along the coast that are protected today that make it not the Jersey Shore, not Miami, not areas of the country that you can't see or access the beach. I mean, that is really what the Coastal Commission and the Coastal Act, which was passed in 1972. 1976 was the actual legislation and the
72
launching
was like
of
Prop 20, I think.
Prop
Is that
20,
Yeah.
right? Because the legislature could not. They just couldn't get the votes to do what needed to be done, and actually for the best, because the initiative was so much stronger than what was being discussed at the time. So, at the time that obviously, because I've been working in the field for so long, I mean, I knew the commission and I knew what they did, and their partner agency, the Coastal Conservancy, which is sort of their acquisition and planning partner. The commission's the regulatory body.
Yeah.
And then the Coastal Conservancy is, the conservancies receive bond money, generally speaking, or other funding, and they come in, say the Coastal Commission regulates development in a way that it opens up an opportunity for a new park on the coast. The Coastal Conservancy can come in with their partners and help provide the funding to acquire the park. So the Coastal Conservancy has been key, and so much of it's happened here along the coast, in the coastal zone, which, by the way, generally speaking, is about 1,000 yards from the mean high tide line, sometimes more. But the Conservancy in the coastal zone can make acquisitions. That's their area. And also there's a Bay Area Conservancy. So the Bay Area counties also benefit from some of this bond money. And a lot of what's happened here in Sonoma, all over, is the result of that.
It's a proud tradition. It's a really unique type of agency as well. We've got, I would argue that like the Coastal Protection Act of 1976 is one of the most effective environmental laws ever. Like, I think it's up there with things like, it's as powerful as the Endangered Species Act on a local level, along the shoreline for sure. I mean, what we have, it's weird too, because the commission's about not building things. Right? I mean, it's one of those. It's
not necessarily. I mean, it's also about where you build. I mean, it's about not. So when you're talking about the development side of what the commission does, if somebody's proposing to build a big hotel in the middle of the Sonoma Coast in an area that's farmland, there's view sheds, it's obviously that's not going to happen. But if someone plans to build a multi-unit affordable housing, down in one of the coastal cities,
on the cliff,
or even in Eureka,
Yeah.
or even in the Coastal Commission's goal is to, like all land use planners today, is to concentrate development where there are services. We just talked about that with you, Obi, where you live.
Right.
The idea is you want to foster housing at the coast and development at the coast without disturbing, the pristine areas of natural resources, or at least areas that are coming back. Now, another big deal is sea level rise. Huge.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, that's something that has just taken over the mission of the Coastal Commission because it's become such an incredibly.
Let's go there in 1 minute. I'd like to stay on like what you've done because there is like kind of a negative space that you feel, like the fact that there are still like wetlands along the coast.
Right.
We have the commission to think. The fact that we
right.
still have Bolinas Lagoon. We have the commission to think. That was supposed to be like a
37. We flooded 1,000 acres. The 1,000 acres that we gave back, we broke the dikes out there.
Oh
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, the only part of the coast that the Coastal Commission doesn't have
San
authority
Pablo
over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the Bay.
Yeah.
San Francisco Bay, because it was, but yeah, generally, the Coastal Commission's been responsible for protecting so much of the coast of California.
something like
and
5
making
nuclear reactors that would have been along the coast.
Yeah,
that
we already,
Yeah.
And the ones that we do have, we're for example, we're dealing with the decommissioning of San Onofre, which is a very complicated and difficult problem, particularly with sea level rise. And most of these nuclear plants are built like Diablo Canyon on nuclear faults. Nuclear faults? How is it
It is a nuclear fault.
nuclear fault?
Right.
So the commission
and
deals
the
with
state's carbon goals too.
Yeah.
So it's a very complicated matter.
But another important
that I'm of two minds about.
Yeah, lately, this is something I want to talk about that's so important is the Coastal Commission has really been a leader in establishing the importance of environmental justice in its decisions.
Yes.
And so an
Okay.
example of that is last month we met in Imperial Beach, where there's the most heinous example of a violation of every environmental justice principle because
Oh, this is huge. Please walk us through this. Yeah.
There's a lot of water quality issues as a result of a lack of infrastructure on the Mexico side of the border, and the fact that Tijuana has become larger and larger and larger without having, what they need to deal
Upgraded
with
their
sewer
sewer system.
So
right.
we're talking about southern San Diego County.
We're talking about the border.
The
So
border.
Borderfield State Park and one of the largest.
Tijuana Slough.
Yeah, and the estuary, the wetlands. It's the largest wetland area in Southern California. And so what's happened
Incredible
is.
bird migration site.
Yeah. Oh, so critical. It's actually mind-blowing when you go to Imperial Beach and you see the beautiful beach, like so pristine, so amazing on one side, and then this amazing wetland on the other side. And then you realize that people have not been able to swim in the water of Imperial Beach for over a year. It's been closed for over a year. And not only that, the air quality, what's blowing in from the pollutants from the...
Well, even rising from the toxic water.
Right, exactly. So the plant, this sort of a Mexican-U.S. plant right at the border broke, was already really overtaxed, and then Hurricane Hillary came through and just sort of broke it down completely, and it's barely
kind of plant is this?
operating. It's a sewage treatment plant.
Yeah,
see.
they have.
It's a huge sewage treatment plant.
Okay.
Throughout Mexico, especially
The
big
picture gets
like Puerto
clearer.
Vallarta and places like that, you can't swim because they haven't upgraded their sewage systems to handle the sewage, and so they're constantly falling apart, and you're getting raw sewage and others into the water. And so here in Tijuana, they've got a sewage system, say, that would accommodate 60,000 people, and they have 1.5 million people there.
Yeah, right. And so, but this is a joint U.S.-Mexico plant because the water comes over from Tijuana, where I saw for the first time the fence, which they, were able to, somehow the U.S. government managed to build 2 layers of this giant fence, which we're all familiar with, and yet here you have this sewage treatment plant completely, basically, barely operating. So there was money allocated to it, but then once they started to dig into how they would spend that money, they realized that the plant needed, $600 million to $1 billion to get up to speed. And in the meantime, you have this
A whole
this
new plant.
very diverse, but definitely Latino majority community of working people living in Imperial Beach, depending on the beach economy, and not being able, having signs you cannot go in the water. I mean, how does that impact a beach economy? It just destroys it. So for months and months and months and months, this has been going on. So last month, the commission met there, and our leadership, and particularly the city council, the mayor of the city council, Paloma Aguirre of Imperial Beach, and then our chair, Donna Brownsey, and our incredible staff, put together a full day so we could go down to Borderfield. We could see the plant. So it was the commission, the lieutenant governor who sits on the coastal commission, Leni Koulianakis, was with us. Incredibly powerful to have her there. And so we had a full day opportunity with the press to see that, to meet on it, to hear testimony about all the impacts of what was happening. And we just found out yesterday, and to ask the federal government to allocate the money to do something about this tragic situation. And I didn't even tell you this. We just found out yesterday that another $310 million was included in Biden's budget, which should be enough with the other $300 million to really make inroads in repairing this entire situation. So, I don't think it's just chance that 3 weeks after or 2 weeks after we had that meeting and called all that attention, that now we see $300 million additional in the budget for that plant. And I think that's a sign of the power of the commission and of course, of the lieutenant governor.
Because she has
following up on it, demanding. So
she has a very close relationship with the president, and it's so helpful to have her on the commission.
Who is she?
Right.
Eleni Koulianakis, lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
She
was there at the meeting, tweeting about it, talking about it, and just that this is not an acceptable situation on any level.
But it is a technical problem, right? I mean, clean up, upgrade the equipment.
Well, the first thing
it's infrastructure.
It's infrastructure. But the first thing you're going to have to do is upgrade and invest the money in that treatment plant,
right?
Because otherwise, you're just it's going to be an endless cycle of trying to clean up that land, the water, because you're just going to keep polluting it. So you've got to put the money into that, upgrading that.
And then once
plant.
once that's fixed, then you're going to see things start to turn around there, and everything come back to life. And it went all the way up to Coronado. Coronado beaches were closed. Silver Strand, one of those popular state parks in the state of California.
How many miles actually was that up?
I don't know exactly, Greg, 100? But it's a long ways up to Coronado.
Coronado's up.
So
100 miles.
But I mean, that's just an example. People think of the Coastal Commission, you're not allowing a person to build a second story or something, which is generally done by the city. So the cities, we partner with the cities and the counties. They adopt their own local coastal plans. We approve the local coastal plans, assuming that they comply with all of the provisions of the Coastal Act, and then they take over that regulatory function.
Right.
So once they do that, then we become kind of an appellate body. So most parts of the state have local coastal plans. But this is an example of how the commission as a body, as a public hearing body, can really make a difference. So that's just been an amazing outcome.
Well, in fact, that's your mission. That's the responsibility. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, so we meet a week a month all over the state, in all of the coastal areas of the state. So it's a pretty,
So that's a wonderful example of sort of reactivity, of remediation, right? Is there let's explore for a second, like the proactive, like anticipatory, especially in with the coming horizon of sea level rise, for example, which might put you out of a job.
No, I think it would increase the job.
I think it's going to increase our jobs. I think it's going to be a lot more difficult.
More to do. They'll need about 10 commissions.
But you zeroed in on that. So, one of the things that has been happening over a period of time is California has been engaged in their own, version of what the IPCC is doing. And I think Wade talked about that too. California has its own, every 2 years has its, I believe it's every 2 years, has its own, these are the predictions of what's happening. These are the mitigations. This is the adaptations we can take. And then following along with that are projections about sea level rise that are the Coastal Commission does, the Ocean Protection Council, which is part of the Resources Agency, they do theirs. So everyone is working together to really try to zero in on what is going to happen at the coast, because how can you plan at all what should be built, where it should be built, the whole seawall thing is another thing, but let's just take one of the big issues is the low sand corridor down in San Diego, the train, running from San Diego all the way up the Southern California coast. It's basically, falling into the ocean, has been closed quite a lot. I mean, that is an example of major infrastructure that we have to figure out what is going to happen with that.
Underwater.
I mean, you keep, because it's such important infrastructure, coastal dependent, they're allowed to put up barriers. So they've been putting up seawalls, they've been putting up boulders, they've been doing whatever they can to try to stop that rail from falling, but it's never going to work.
Well,
because
Caryl,
the ocean is just not going to.
Talk about the problems with seawalls. Because people think of that as a solution, but talk about what that does, what happens.
Well, one of the easiest ways to think about seawalls is when you build a seawall, it protects what's on the land side of the seawall, but on the beach side, it is a complete devastation and destruction because beaches are created by the natural motion of the ocean, of course, hitting either a cliff or rocks or wetlands and continuing to build up, the area to create beaches and maintain it. It's a whole system like everything else, that look around here, all these critical systems that man comes in and says, oh, we need to build homes here, or we need to build nuclear power plants or rail lines or whatever right here at the coast, and we'll just build walls and that will be fine. But what you see is the minute, really very soon after you build a seawall of any kind, the beach disappears in front of it. So as a result of sea level rise and the seawalls that have already been built, which the Coastal Commission does not allow at this time for that reason, the projections are right now, even without the latest bad news from Antarctica in terms of much accelerated melting, that something like 70% of California beaches are going to be lost in the next 50 years if we don't do something we have to expand wetlands. We have to move back from the coast. We need to really accelerate our coastal adaptation, or we will not have beaches in this state. You will go to the edge of a cliff and the ocean will be underneath you. The whole experience, not just for us, but for all of the creatures that live on the beach and depend on it, will be over. The birds, there's so many things that live at the coast or need the coast.
Or dependent on the coast.
The coastal ecosystem.
Yeah.
And then the tourism base for California. Billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars that, when people think of California, they come to California to go to the beach. The beaches are under siege now. And we have so many problems and issues from, what the impacts are going to be of climate change. And because sea level rise has a sort of a gradual, it's going to be 1 inch, it's going to be 2 inches. Well, no, it's going to be now 3 feet. It's going to be probably now 5 feet. And you can see what that looks like. One easy way to see what it looks like is, each year we have high tides. We have this sort of high tide phase generally in January, and you can see the flooding that occurs down in Marin, around the bay. It's a sign of what's coming our way. So it's a big part of what the Coastal Commission is doing now, to continue to project sea level rise, what's coming, and to make our decisions based on that. So that if someone wants to build a house on a cliff, we know that cliff is likely going to be eroding because of sea level rise. So we have requirements of setbacks, which people don't like. People that want to build a house right on the edge of a cliff, they want to do what they want to do. And that's where the conflict sometimes comes with the Coastal Commission, as well as just housing generally. Housing is needed so much in the state of California. The Coastal Commission, in the Coastal Act, had the right to require or strongly recommend affordable housing in the coastal zone. And a bill passed in 1981 removed that part of the Coastal Act. And we've been struggling ever since. And of course, we see what's happened at the coast with, very, very expensive housing. So we're now trying as hard as we can to regain that power so that when we have an opportunity to require affordable housing in a development, that we can do that. Right now, we don't have that power. We can try to make it happen in different ways. So this is something that's coming up. for the legislature, for the
State
for the
legislature.
administration, to help us regain that authority.
Caryl, your environmentalism has been so broad in so many different environments. We've just been talking, well, we've started talking about what you've done for parks here, and then we moved to the Coastal Commission and what you're doing for the coast, along the coast to the Californians, working locally and then statewide for the coast. But the other big thing that you've done is and been instrumental in establishing is the Redwood Trail. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well,
Another environment, the redwood environment.
The redwood environment.
Yeah.
Well, this is all, springing from our incredible state senator, Mike McGuire, who's now the Senate leader pro tem, who was a county supervisor here coming from Healdsburg. And he was a county supervisor when I was at Regional Parks, and we did lots of things together, and we had a lot of fun. He's like super energetic guy, and we were always cooking up some fun or good or expansion.
Yeah.
So when he got to the state senate, and I had left regional parks by then, I talked to him about what opportunities there might be for me to help out. And he said, look, we have this situation with this North Coast Rail Authority, and the vision is it owns the right-of-way from San Francisco Bay all the way up to Arcata. So we own the right-of-way. So unlike something like the Coastal Trail, where you have to buy each piece of the trail,
Right.
the rail line is already there.
Oh,
So his
of course.
idea was, let's create the largest rail trail in the country through some of the most beautiful environments, many of which people have never seen, along this rail right-of-way. And of course, I was like, oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So we embarked on that. I think that all started probably around 2018. And, he moved forward with legislation and a lot of funding, passed a couple bills. And little by little, we reformed the agency and the board. And now it's the Great Redwood Trail Agency. So the North Coast Rail Authority went away, which is really dysfunctional agency that kept trying to bring back rail through areas like the Eel River Canyon, which
Right.
you're going to be learning, probably know a lot about, are going to learn a lot more. But so the rail through the canyon, every storm, pieces of the rail would just fall in, cars would just fall in, and it just was inoperable.
Yeah.
There and other parts. So now the vision, Senator McGuire's vision and our vision as the Great Redwood Trail Agency. You got some beautiful stellar jays over there.
Oh, we're surrounded by birds. I've been watching. We're
That's so
surrounded
awesome.
by birds. We've got flickers. We've got woodpeckers. We're surrounded by them.
Oh,
Whoops,
it's so
excuse me.
fun. It's so
Yes,
awesome.
And what's been dropping are the pepper nuts are dropping. So,
It's like when it comes on your...
and then a bird will come.
It's like Mickey's drums or something.
I know.
It really is
I know, it's like
percussive.
boom, boom, boom. It's good. I always have that in the background, so it's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we're moving forward. First step
It's
is
an
rail
essential
banking.
access.
It's all happening.
There's protection. There's access. There's these rules I see in your vision
Well, they all overlap
for
because if
environmental.
people
Conservation.
people have to have access to nature. You can call it, we talked earlier about wilderness,
Right.
but as strained as that word's become, nevertheless, if people have the feeling that they're in a wild place, it's just transformative. I know it is for you and for Greg and
Well,
for
it
me.
becomes no longer wild. It becomes part of your experience.
Right.
Exactly.
And you feel a connection and a relationship to it.
Right.
Because you can't walk into woods and not feel some kind of awe. And awe is the beginning of a relationship.
There's like a book somebody just wrote on awe. Did you know that's
No,
called? It's called
no.
like awe. But it's so true, and especially today. I don't know about you, but every time I get too deep into reading the news on my phone or whatever, I start to have this queasy feeling, and actually always. And how do you get your head back and find
There's a
some sense of
cathedral, and
peace?
if you look at these trees here,
Oh, God.
and if you stand in the middle of them, what I do when I get really upset is I just stand in the middle of this circle of trees here, and that helps me.
Yeah, and so the idea is to make these beautiful outdoor spaces available to everybody, regardless of your background. Make sure that you're telling the story of the parks and making people from all backgrounds feel welcome, whether that means you have signs in different languages or rangers that come from different backgrounds. These are the types of things that are You just got to work on. If you want people to have access.
Yeah, that's right. We have a question from our audience here that sort of dovetails into something I want to talk a little bit more about that, which is sea level rise. I've been working with a watershed project down in Contra Costa County who are building what they call a living levee, right? So this is an engineering solution to protecting an underserved community from encroaching sea level, but it's also to protect habitat space. Yep. So it's this porous structure that they're building from the Chevron refinery to Point Pinole in northern Richmond. And it's a very interesting solution. The question from our audience member is could talk more about coastal preservation, the impact of climate change, sea level rises. We're protecting littoral drift and sediment flow from beach to beach, because when you're talking about the destruction of our beaches by tidal action from increasing sea levels, we have that's really the danger. How do we protect? So there is like an engineering component here, but would it be right to say though, like, to protect these spaces from development is a good place to start? We have to make sure that those houses aren't next to cliffs. We have to make sure, like, what's the pathway there?
So there's different areas that have different solutions. So, you know, when you're talking about what's going on in the Bay, this idea of living shorelines, and this all comes under the general concept of natural adaptation to climate change. Responding to climate change, whether it's with conservation, by preserving open space, because of course, the more open space you have, the more carbon sequestration you have, whether it's in a redwood forest where you're talking heavy duty carbon, within the trees, or you're talking about wetlands or just meadows. Right. I mean, land that is not built on is absorbing carbon, is growing, and this whole system is happening. And it's the same thing with the ocean. The ocean needs to move in the way it will move, in the way it wants to. And in history, what you had was wetlands, and of course you had you have the cliffs like down in Encinitas or down in Southern California. So in the wetland areas, the idea is to restore those areas as much as possible. So a great example, and one of the biggest Caltrans projects, the biggest natural adaptation project, is here in Sonoma County at Gleason Beach. So you had a creek that was coming in that was blocked by Highway 1, no fish passage. I mean, really, like a lot of creeks that we see around here that are just sort of blocked off. And then you have Highway 1 with the houses that were built on the ocean side of Highway 1. The houses have just fallen into the ocean. So in that situation, and this was a coastal commission, I believe the Conservancy, Caltrans project, the entire Highway 1 was moved way in and lifted up above the creek. So now you have restoration of the creek, you have restoration of the coast. The houses have gone, it's in a very sad situation for the people that own those, but nevertheless. So now you've created a coastal trail access, you have a large overpass that's way in from the coast. So that's a combination of natural adaptation, we're talking about the creek and restoration, and then hardscape of moving Highway 1, which is the only way, essentially, the people in Bodega Bay get north to the Russian River, and then to town.
That's so brilliant. Yeah, you got to take it on a base.
Yeah, and that's we're
case
seeing
by case basis. It's very granular on that level geographically, but also I think that what you're describing is something so brilliant, because there's, especially in terms of the 30 by 30 state law now, this mandate that we have, this.
I wish it was a law. I think it's more like a goal.
No, it just got passed as a state law 2 weeks ago.
Is it a law?
Yes, it's a law.
We'll see what the state does to move forward.
To make that happen, right? Well, it's 30% of lands and coastal waters, but there's this liminal space really between the two, which strikes me as the commission's purview.
Yeah, it's really important. And in Southern California, it's much more challenging because you have so much of the coast has been built up. And a lot of those houses, I mean, you go down there and see different communities, and it's really heartbreaking because that was the California dream, build your house on the beach. So literally houses just built right on the beach.
Right.
And the future is just not bright. And we saw just here in Pacifica, for example, or what just happened down at in Santa Cruz area. I mean, we can see what the future is going to bring. And so we can wait for this to happen to us, or we can be smart and start to accept that this is coming. And, with government, with NGOs, and with private citizens and the commission and everybody working together to start coming up with a plan for California. For me personally, I mean, the area that I'm the most interested in and really want to focus on is the protection of our public lands along the coast, because of everything we've talked about here today. People, particularly as the inland areas are getting hotter and hotter and hotter, access to the beach is so important. And that's a key mission of the Coastal Commission.
Right.
If people can't access the coast because the beaches are gone, that's pretty much undermines everything we're trying to do. So I think it's really critical as we move forward now for the Coastal Commission, for our state parks department, for regional parks, for federal land management entities to identify and prioritize what is going on in the coast of California. Where can sort of do a diagram where is something that we can do may not be as important, but it's easy to do. Or here is an area that it's going to be very difficult, but it's absolutely critical, and the benefit would be so massive. So we have to prioritize these projects.
I also think
the
partnerships are going to be crucial in going forward to achieve these kinds of goals. The University of California owns a lot of land, coastal land. And again, in one of the things that we've talked about at the border, the regions, is about the ways in which and the lands, much of it's just have been sitting there. So how are you going to begin to use it, and what are going to be the rules of access to that? Also, to what extent, why not use students and a lot of our research in the university to be working out there to come up with solutions and restoration plans and that sort of thing. So I think all of us need to come together in that way. And I want to go back to a little bit about what you said a couple moments ago, Caryl, and one of the reasons that the tribe and the Coastal Commission and what you're doing is so important, because what you've been talking about is something that is important for all of us, and that's the preservation and restoration of land that we all share. And in doing that, it can't be just the Coastal Commission alone. It can't or the federal government or the state government, local government. We need to work together. We need to partner. And I think that in those ways, that's where the solutions will be, in these kinds of collective partnerships, which are so essential to solving so many of these problems.
Yeah, no, that's right on, Greg. And the reality is that the UC system, whether it's Charles Lester, who was the former director of the commission, he's at UC Santa Barbara doing amazing work with his team down there, with just incredible. Gary Griggs is with Santa Cruz, and Kiki Patch, they're working together on just cutting edge. This is the knowledge base, and then scripts.
Yeah.
So having the UC system, and then at Humboldt, there's a huge Humboldt Bay. The plan is for Humboldt Bay to be the center of the future of wind power in California. Well, that's going to take a lot of research, and so the fact that we have the UC system and the Cal State system, as well as our incredible private colleges, it's all part of the picture here.
Yeah.
Nobody can know enough, but everyone working together. But we have to, and the California legislature and the administration, they have to identify, and have been, but they need to really
advocate and create policy.
And say, okay, fire is a huge issue in California, and that's been recognized, and there has been a lot of funding flowing in the direction of trying to deal with vegetation management, making sure that CAL FIRE is funded, helping local entities. We really need to look at sea level as the same way, or even more significant.
It raises the big problem, though. Fire got attention once there was so much tragedy.
I know.
So are we going to wait? And the problem when it comes to the ocean and sea level rise, it's a fire that you won't put out once it's here. So you must anticipate it.
That is such a good way of putting it.
And so you must anticipate it now and begin thinking about that, because the fires you can put out for a while. But again, once sea level rise as it continues, and as more and more houses and highways and the infrastructure falls apart accordingly, it's again, as I was saying, it's a fire you won't be able to put out. So we have to get out of the mindset of not being afraid of the tiger until it's in our living room. And anticipate. We have to learn, what has the fire taught us about what happens when you don't anticipate these problems in the natural world.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true.
That's a great point. Doing it smartly is important. Right now, we've got the 30 by 30 plan, which is a noble vision. The number 30% of our coastal waters is rather arbitrary. I guess it's just drawn on the alliteration of 30 by 30, right? Right now we're at about 16%. The marine protected areas qualify. The national marine sanctuaries don't, right? Because everyone has all of those. This is my understanding. All of those have different qualifiers, different regulations, different conditions that sort of dictate and prescribe their own purpose. And so, when we're talking about industry, we're talking about people access fishing industries, right? The fishing industry has rightly like a huge contention with the 30 by 30 vision, right? Because you would think, rightly so, that the fishing industry really wants to protect biodiversity and biological functioning within the ocean, right? For example, this is probably more Ocean Protection Council than Coastal Commission.
What you're solidly in the area, and you guys should definitely, if you haven't already, you've had Wade, but it would be great to get people that really focus on fishing. So California has a Fish and Game Commission that governs, endangered species protection, identification of fish and wildlife preserves, etc. So Fish and Wildlife is what's really responsible for 30 by 30.
30 by 30, that's right. Yeah, I guess I'm talking about the larger idea of resource take, whether or not it might be timber in the forest, it might be land area in the desert, for example, for the state's climate goals, or it might be whatever we're getting out of the ocean, food. So, they're balancing the harvest of these resources along with, as Greg is rightly pointing out, the pending emergency of collapse, and anticipating that is best solved, I hope, that we can agree by democratic solutions.
Yeah.
Let's jump back to the 30 by 30. No. It's a great vision. It's a great idea. How are the monies being appropriated and where? And how are plans being implemented? So again, I am always skeptical of the politicians, my friends, who come up with these great ideas, but then how are they implemented and what effect? And how is the effect measured?
You mean because I've seen the plans. The plans are good, but you're talking about how is it going to actually come out?
Is good.
How's it going to execute?
It's an idea at this point.
Yeah.
It's a nice idea.
It's a good plan.
It's a good plan, but until we are doing something, until I see it in action, and I guess what concerns me is I feel urgent. I feel these things are urgent, and we need to move and start seeing things happening.
And private property. I mean, the problem too with 30 by 30 really is based largely on setting at the federal and state level, setting the aspiration and then looking down to the subdivisions, let's say in California. Yeah. So let's talk about Sonoma County. Yeah. So Sonoma County has a quarter-cent sales tax, which produces now about $35 million a year for the protection of ag and open space. So you could say, well, we have everything we need. We should be able to protect the most important biodiversity in this county, no problem. Right. Well, of course we can't because of private property rights. Right. A lot of private property owners don't want public land managers or conservation easements, anything to do with it. And Sonoma Mountain's a great example of that.
It's a
this has been like
perfect
a war
example.
zone up here when it comes to that stuff.
Well, let's talk about Tole Lake. We want to
Yeah.
fill the lake, and there's vineyards on one side of it
Right.
that are totally opposed to it and fighting us at this moment. It's ongoing. So, again, I think Tole is a perfect example of
Right.
what's going on there in our restoration efforts.
And just
wow.
the history of
Yeah.
California
Yeah.
and private landowners. And I mean, that's why you see a lot more, people talk a lot about England and Great Britain in terms of public access, that there's not this kind of history of public land ownership. And I'm not dismissing it or saying it's not a good thing. I mean, I own land in the county and so does Greg. And it's,
We're sitting on it.
and with the Great Redwood Trail Agency, it's a big deal because we own the right-of-way and it goes through private land. We need to absolutely understand and respect the perspective of private landowners. I'm just saying, when it comes to 30 by 30, you can identify the most critical areas that are needed to protect biodiversity, whether it's the coast, whether it's on land, wherever, and not be able to accomplish your goal because, generally
Fences.
speaking, there's no right of eminent domain, and it's a bad policy anyway to take people's land.
Of
It's not exactly
course.
popular.
Of course.
So this is the challenge. You can do what you can do. You can have the aspiration, but it can be very challenging to accomplish it.
Wow, what an education today. Now, your home is on the other side of the county.
It is, yeah. We live more on the coast in the coastal area.
Redwoods.
Yeah,
Not in the
Redwoods.
coastal zone. We're out of the coastal zone. The coastal zone can go up to 5 miles in areas like the Sonoma Coast. So when you have an undeveloped or recreational areas or parkland, so generally it's 1,000 yards from, or sometimes less like in an urban area. Generally speaking, it's 1,000 yards from the mean high tide line. But in the Sonoma Coast, it can go in up to 5 miles. So, but we're even further in. So you have the coastal foothills, then you go in, then you have the redwoods, and that's where we live, in that kind of redwood area.
Now, did you know Caryl first, or did you know Mickey first?
Oh, no, definitely.
Caryl.
We knew each other.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, for those who don't know, Carol's married to one of the great musicians of the last 50 years, Mickey Hart.
Thank you. That's very nice.
Yeah,
He'll
on
love that.
one of-
He is great. He's amazing.
He got his jacket on there, I see.
Oh, I do? Is this have any
It's got
Grateful
a
Dead?
little steal your
Oh, this
face
has
over
a
there, doesn't it?
Mickey. Oh, no, that's Mickey's.
Grateful Dead.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
it's-
that's what we call this guy the
dr-
Edge Man.
Oh, I see.
This
The
is
drum
the
almost
Edge
looks
Man
like a steal
here.
your face. Okay.
Yeah, no, he is having a great time there. This is like pretty much like Mickey every day.
Yeah.
What you
Yes,
say?
yes, it is.
But
Yeah.
Greg and Mickey are great friends, and it's wonderful to be around them. They're just both so brilliant, and they're into. They just come up with such wonderful ideas, and
Well, Mickey's a genius. I mean, he's this incredible, one of the greatest, if not greatest, drummer, percussionist at the moment, in my opinion. And so many people think, that he identify him as the drummer for the Grateful Dead. He's done so much more than that. He's currently doing the music for ESPN. He's done
Like
the Coppola
today.
movies.
today he's doing
that's
a
what he's
rhythm
doing.
of the game that's
Rhythm
going to
of the
be coming
Game.
out. Really going to be
And
cool.
so,
Okay, all right.
he's recognized as this incredible artist. And artist also, he's got paintings and he's got books that he's written. And the guy, I love talking to him because it's a great mind. And, we spin out. So it's just been a remarkable friend
And
to
our
have.
daughter, too, is super good friends with Greg. He's been an absolute inspiration. She's a writer, and he has been such an inspiration and role model. And now she's doing great.
She's a brilliant and beautiful young woman who is a perfect combination of her father and mother. Has the best qualities of both.
You all do vacations and stuff together. Right?
Yeah, we do. We hang out.
Hey, man, Greg takes vacations. That's okay, time to go vacation. I've got one night.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's where I'm a little better than Mickey. Mickey won't give you
Do you
one
do
night.
vacations?
I do one night, right? So, anyway.
Every day's a vacation when you're doing what you love. And,
Yeah,
that's something I want to say. You can talk about how hard we're all working and everything, but the three of us and Mickey, right, everybody that can wake up each day and do what they love and feel like they're contributing, even though it's depressing, a lot of the time because of what we're dealing with. But, Coastal Commission's a lot of work. Our meetings in Imperial Beach, they can be 12 hours or longer. But you feel at the end of the day when you walk away, even if you don't win all the votes, which I sometimes don't, which always bothers me. But
you've done something worthwhile. You've tried.
Done something worthwhile, and you struggled. And so I think that's what life's about, right? And I mean, I just think that's true of all your guests have been, that you've talked to so far, and for both of you.
It's true. I take that's such a wonderful, inspiring point. Winona LaDuke saying that if you pick something and that you can get done in your lifetime, you're not thinking big enough.
That's for sure.
Well, the other thing is, I would add to that, if you feel that you're done, you're kidding yourself.
Oh, that's very good. I like that more. That sounds
Mickey's
like something
motto,
Mabel would say.
I think Mickey's motto is, you can sleep when you're dead.
Yeah, that's how I feel. People always say to me,
My goodness.
people always say to me, well, how do you do all the things that you do? And I go, I work. I'm here to get it all done. And what do I always say to you? Sleeping's a waste of time. Think of all the things you could get done.
Oh my gosh! Oh my God! Incessant productivity. I think that's part of the problem there too. I'm gonna have to get off there because
you are totally. I've told you every time I've talked to you, I have no idea how you do everything you do, and it's so spectacular.
And the paintings and drawings on top of it.
I know.
Oh,
I mean, what
I don't know
a gift.
what else I'm gonna do with my time. I tell you, but it's I want to say, like, in all seriousness, like when we sat here a month ago, it was before the war, the horror of wars entered. Talking about going outside. Take the time today to take a nap under a tree. It's okay. We're talking about endless productivity, but we need rest. We need sleep. Every breath we take in right now, we're breathing in hundreds of thousands of fungal spores into our physiology, actually affecting our neuro and bodily chemistry in profound ways. We need this medicine. It's not just all about numbers and human politics, right? It's about our bodies and the world.
Yeah, and being able to give back. I mean, because when there's so much trauma and just horrific violence all over the planet, and particularly now, obviously, in the Middle East and Ukraine and lots of other places, you have to, if you're going to be trying to make things better, if you're going to be participating in a positive way, you have to take care of yourself. And I know for so many people, 5 minutes, and it's proven fact. I mean, 5 minutes in nature can make the difference. I mean, there's so many studies, for example, of being in a hospital, people that have a view of a tree or any kind of a natural setting recover much faster than somebody that's looking at a brick wall or nothing. And so you can imagine.
I study it every day.
Yeah,
I think that's what sustained me, this mountain. I mean, because imagine going to work down in a casino where it's all lights and all of that sort of thing. And I come up the mountain, and even before I'm home, I'm transformed just by the ride. And you get out of the car and the air up here, and then you see all of this, and I'm going, okay, this is why I do what I do.
Very good.
So we got to make sure that this is available for as many people as we possibly can. I mean, it's just not fair that so many kids in LA have never been to the beach. It's just not fair. That people would have to have really no access to green space. That's just not right when it's so important to people's lives and their sanity.
Those co-equal goals of preservation and access are paramount.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, with that, my friends, I want to announce that our winner this month of the Greg and Obi book, a reminder, you can go to placeandpurpose.live and register your email with us. And every month, a winner at random is chosen to receive a book of mine. I think it's Coast of California, and then a book of Greg's. I think it would be
Coast
How a
is
Mountain.
Perfect Today with Caryl Hart.
How a Mountain is Made. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. There's a reason it's sitting there. So our winner today is Megan Morlock from Los Angeles, California.
Great.
Woohoo! Thank you so much for listening, Megan. Thank you so much. I got such an education today, Caryl. Wow, I can't. What a pleasure it is to sit down with you for a moment in the cold
before we leave the book
autumn
thing,
Yes.
I see my great friend Rosanna Shaw's book is there, California Against the Sea. That is of all the stuff we've been talking about today. I was just with Rosanna. I actually was lucky enough to do a little book reading with her in Point Reyes Station, but she's just an incredible reporter. And this book, which it's only been out a month, I mean, I recommend it to everyone on top of all of your books. If you really want to read about what's going on with sea level rise and what's happening in California, pick it up. It's absolutely fantastic.
It really
So
is.
thanks for having
Obi
that
carries
here.
books around. Usually
Yeah.
he's got a box.
Rosanna's-
What happened to your box, Obi?
She's
He
incredible.
Got the bag today.
He carries a box up and down the mountain here.
I do. I do. Books
Yeah,
to me
yeah,
are like some sort of ballast.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
To keep reality in perspective as the chaos.
But anyway, thank you
tides
so much for having me,
ravage.
and it's just been
Thank
so
you,
great.
Carol.
Thank you so much, Greg, and to the tribe for sponsoring this.
Yes, it's been great.
You guys, it's just so
Well,
many
it was
wonderful
so great
things.
having you, Carol, because
It was fun.
we've worked together so long and on so many things that are about everything Obi and I talk about with each other and with the guests on the show. So
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. Well, today was really about sort of policy and our attitude on a human level to our landscape. Next month's guest is Adina Marinlander, who is an ecologist, a good friend
Good
of yours
friend,
too.
absolutely.
Yes, right.
She's
And so
fantastic.
we might talk a little bit more science or maybe ethology, the study of animal
30
behavior.
by 30. She's great too about, what the impacts is. She studied quite a lot about what the impacts are on wild animals of parks and trails. And so it's sort of counterbalanced to me, and she and I always have this debate. I'm always like gung-ho, more trails, more parks, more access. And she's like, whoa. Think about what the impact is on creatures while you're, forging ahead with your park. So it's a really good balance. So it'll be great to hear from her.
And depth,
Well,
plurality of
she'll
voices.
find this interesting up here. There's so much wildlife.
She'll
I mean,
love it.
there's- I've seen bobcats almost every time you've been up
Almost
here.
every time I've been up here.
Yeah.
Where are they?
They're watching. The cougars watch. The guy that my security person at night, again 2 weeks ago, saw a cougar right up there by my garage. A big one.
But you're absolutely right. The order of the day is nut caching, right?
Yeah.
So we've got the flickers, we've got the other woodpeckers, we've got the jays out here,
Busy,
and
yeah.
they are busy, industrious.
Yeah.
All right.
You see the birds everywhere in the trees. Those are other kinds of birds all coming in.
God, it's
Lots of bluebirds
spectacular.
out this
A
morning.
lot of
too.
bluebirds,
Yes,
yeah.
that's right. I think that's a bluebird up there. Anyway, okay. Until next time.
All right, great. Well, thank you both so much. That was awesome.
Thank you, Carol.
No, it was super fun. Weren't you cold?
My hand's a little bit.
I know. Are we all done?
But
I think we're all done.
Are we
Okay,
done?
great.
Are we free there, Jared?
10, 9, 8, 7, 6.